A European Union and Eurozone member country, Cyprus is ideal to live and invest in. Cyprus. Invest with confidence.
Welcome to the Financial Mirror.tv Cyprus Report, sponsored by the Cyprus Investment Promotion Agency. A fast-track passage of a bill for covered bonds should ease banks' access to ECB liquidity facilities and help unlock up to €5 billion in new funding for local banks, according to Cyprus Finance Minister Harylos Stavrakis. In an interview with the Financial Mirror, the minister said that the central bank is working on the final details of the bill, drafted after comments from the Finance Ministry. He said he is hopeful that banks will gain access to ECB financing at preferential rates once the covered bill comes into effect, and the exact amount of new funding will depend on the bank's ability to rate their loans and use it as collateral with the ECB to qualify for the loans. The Cyprus stock market, which suffered its worst performance in a decade last year, has beaten world markets, even surpassing the highly speculative Chinese rally in a recovery led by Bank of Cyprus shares. The CSE General Index ended on the last day of June at 1389.74, up 49% quarter-on-quarter and 26% since the start of the year, ranking Cyprus as the best performer in the Eurozone, according to Financial Mirror data. Bank of Cyprus is leading the charge, having galloped over 76% in the second quarter and up 49% since the beginning of the year. BOC shares closed at €4.02 on 30 June. The IMF is happy with the quality of the stress tests carried out by the Central Bank of Cyprus on local banks, but the IMF mission head has cautioned that underlying risks remain, calling on banks to maintain high levels of capital to meet the risk from a prolonged crisis or a further decline in property prices. The IMF urged Cyprus to cut a bloated state payroll, feeding growing deficits that could spike over the Eurozone threshold of 3%. The IMF also said it expected the Cyprus government general deficit to reach 3.9%, with growth at around 0.3%. This is a sharp reversal from surpluses of 2007 and 2008, and a divergence from Finance Ministry forecast of a 2.0 to 2.5% deficit this year and a 1% growth. The European Investment Bank has authorized €250 million to be given to Cypriot small and medium-sized enterprises. The money will be channeled through the Bank of Cyprus, Hellenic Bank, and Marfin Laiki, and all three must make available $250 million from their own funds. The agreement will be signed between the EIB and the Cypriot banks on July 10. The Employers Federation has called on the Minister of Trade and Tourism to step up government measures to boost the tourist industry, as arrivals declined in the first 5 months by 9.9%. Tourism income dropped 12% to €390 million in the first 5 months, and by 17% in May alone to €158 million. However, the average stay has increased from 9.46 days to 9.68. A strong euro could be the reason for the fast decline, as tour operators try to keep prices steady in sterling. More than half of all tourists come from the UK. The employers also asked the minister to keep the measures in place until April 2010. The business climate in Cyprus deteriorated in June by 2.1 points month-on-month to 63.3 points, according to the business and consumer surveys conducted by the University of Cyprus. This resulted from the deterioration in the services sector and to a lesser extent in construction, according to analysts at Marfin CLR Financial Services. On the positive side, the business climate in retail, trade, and manufacturing improved in June. The total value of bounced checks in Cyprus reached €5.3 million in the first half of the year, nearly level with last year's total of €5.6 million, primarily due to the worsening economic situation. To date, 948 individuals and companies have issued 2,336 checks. The chairman of the Central Bank's Central Information Registry announced at the launch of the first Cyprus Credit Bureau, a joint venture with the Chamber of Commerce and the Info Credit Group that will allow public access to the blacklist of bounced check offenders. The issuer of any bounced check worth over €2,000 or any 3 successive bounced checks will be placed on the blacklist and ordered to hand in all blank checks. Inland Revenue reported that tax revenue for January through May dropped by 11% to €582 million, mainly due to the significant decline in revenue from capital gains tax and a decline in the demand in the property market. Property details announced by the Land Registry were also down by 60%, supporting the decline in property-related revenues. On the bright side, income tax from employees and corporation tax rose by 20% and 15% respectively. The Electricity Authority of Cyprus will not impose a 3% surcharge on all household bills, which was set to go in effect from July 1st to pay the €11 million fine imposed by the EU on Cyprus for exceeding quotas on CO2 emissions. The decision to back down followed a huge outcry from the Auditor General, political parties, and the public, and is a major embarrassment for the EAC, as well as the Cyprus Energy Regulatory Authority. The EAC said it cannot be blamed for exceeding greenhouse gas emissions because this is a direct outcome of the government's energy policy. Sending a text message anywhere in the EU has been slashed from 28 to 11 cents, while making a roaming call in another EU country must not cost more than 43 cents a minute. With the introduction of new EU-wide rates on July 1st, outgoing roaming calls will be charged by the second, after the first 30 seconds, rather than by the minute. Holidaymakers and business travelers can also surf the web, download movies, or send photos with their mobile without fear of bill shocks thanks to a wholesale cap of €1 per megabyte downloaded. All these measures are expected to cut roaming charges by a further 60% and increase mobile phone use. Thank you for watching the Cyprus Report.
A European Union and Eurozone member country, Cyprus is ideal to live and invest in. Cyprus has a transparent and robust economy, well-educated professionals, attractive taxation and growth potential in several sectors. Cyprus. Invest with confidence.